Hey guys, it's Alex from 7th Hour Films, back again with Merlin. Last time on Merlin, we had Valiant. A tournament was being held at Camelot to see, I guess, who the best knight is? I don't know, they just kind of had a tournament. And Arthur was the defending champion of the tournament, and there was one knight who was rising through the ranks called Knight Valiant, who, unbeknownst to pretty much everyone but Merlin, was using magic to bring the snakes on his shield to life to poison his opponent and win. And kill them as well. So, and he was going to do that on Arthur, and Merlin tried to tell Arthur, and they tried to tell the king, but they didn't have any proof, so Merlin had to do it on his own. He did end up saving the day, and, yeah, that's basically that. This is where I say no spoilers in the comments whatsoever. Let's stick to this episode and previous episodes of Merlin that I've reacted to. And with that being said, let's get right into this episode of Merlin. Here we go. Hey guys, I just wanted to come on here and say that due to copyright issues, the reaction actually is not in this video. The reaction you want to watch is not in this video. But there is still a way of viewing it. If you go down in the description of this video, there is a link to Google Drive. It's nice, it's all good, and you can watch my 10-minute highlight reaction with the footage, completely free of charge. And yeah, you can go watch that, you can go enjoy it, and then when you're done with that, you can come back over to the YouTube video for the discussion. Yeah, that's pretty much that. See you guys there. Enjoy. Sorry about this. Okay, another interesting episode. I'm glad we kind of have an overarching villain now. Because, you know, which I don't know how often she's going to come back. But, yeah, I mean, it seems like the way they set that up. I mean, obviously, this is the first time where we're going to have a recurring villain, at least. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure we'll still kind of go with our sort of Monster of the Week format that we've been doing for the past couple episodes. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we have to build up now to her as the main villain, at least of the season. So yeah, that's definitely interesting. I like that. Hold up, need a drink. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over the notes. Has that always been there? There's a mark on my sword. A little black mark. Oh well. Okay. Alright. So the first thing I wrote down was the plague. That was interesting. It made things a bit more dire than normal because, you know, with the first one, it was dire, but at the same time, that witch was only trying to kill Arthur, and it was pretty fast. You know, it wasn't this thing that everyone was aware was happening. And then in last episode, we had more people that were aware of Knight Valiant, but it wasn't everyone, and it was really, again, only affecting Arthur, whereas now we sort of have it to where this was a like citywide emergency basically. So that's interesting, and everyone knew. Oh, excuse me, Jesus! I didn't think I'd be that big. And everyone knew this was magic. So I like that. We basically upped the stakes a bit on this one. So yeah. And then that coming from the water was also interesting. So, you know, it kind of kept to the lower town for a while. And then eventually was starting to seep into, I guess, the upper town, which was definitely interesting. I wrote down Arthur doing the search. That was kind of interesting. You know, he had to go around all of Camelot, and he even said, like, they started to work on searching the villages, which was interesting. And, you know, we had him, you know, having to search Gaius's residence, basically, and even go through Merlin's room. That was kind of interesting, and we had to have Merlin, you know, hide the spell book, because that would be proof that he was a sorcerer, which you can't do. So yeah, I wrote down Uther / Lower Town. It's interesting the way you watch Uther throughout this episode, because everything he is doing to protect his people. Even at, you know, the worst things he could do, you know, locking up Gwen, sentencing her to die and stuff like that. You know, all of this stuff that he had to do, and some of it was pretty horrible, but he had to do it for the good of his kingdom. So I like that little dynamic, because, you know, you could easily kind of paint him as, well, he's kind of the bad guy here, or a bad guy here, you know, locking up Gwen when it's not Gwen, but he has perfectly good reason, which makes it all the more compelling. So yeah, and like cutting off Lower Town so that the disease doesn't spread. That was interesting. I wrote down science versus magic. That was an interesting sort of debate we had going, like, you know, which should we trust in? Should we trust in Merlin and his magic, or should we trust in Gaius and his science? You know, the problem is that science would take too long, more people would die, including Gwen's father, and then later, you know, when they're trying to find answers on the of Avenac, Avenac, then it's like, well, we can't take too long because otherwise Gwen will be executed. So that was also interesting, that little debate there. And for the most part, I will say, it was science that sort of prevailed, even though, you know, Merlin did save the day at the end, and with his magic and stuff. Magic really caused many of the problems throughout this episode. That and, Merlin's fucking, such a dumbass. It's weird, because in the first episode, I was like, this guy's kind of a dumbass. And then in the next episode, it's like, I just didn't even think about it. And then in this episode, it's like, well, he's back to being a dumbass again. But you can still understand where he's coming from. You know, he's so inexperienced with his powers, and he's still learning the responsibilities and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like, come on, you made this worse. It's like, yes, you saved her father, but then you endangered her. Oh my gosh. So, which is also interesting, you know, having that little thing with Gwen and her father, you know, kind of raising the stakes by making it, okay, this is someone related to, you know, one of my, pretty much like my only friend, and then swapping it to where it's like, well, no, now he's been cured, he's fine, but now Gwen is, you know, gonna be executed. So, yeah, and that's so, it's so infuriating. It's so infuriating to watch Merlin just completely and utterly blow it, and, you know, almost getting Gwen executed. So yeah. So yeah, that, I mean, it was interesting, but it was one of those just, ooh, this character, I mean, I get it, it's episode 3, you know, it's episode 3, he's a young, inexperienced warlock, but at the same time, it's like, come on, man. Oh. So, yeah, hopefully this means he'll get better, though. You know, I hope he does get better, and friggin', I don't know. I want him to get better. Arthur's already getting better. So, oh boy. The next thing I wrote down was the confession. That was kind of weird. That, Merlin goes in to confess, which, again, is stupid and doesn't help anything. And then, Arthur saves his ass, basically, by saying, it's like, oh, well, clearly he's in love with Gwen, and he wants to save her. And then all of them just kind of start laughing. Even Uther starts laughing, and it's just like, this is weird. This is, like, tonally weird and stuff like that. So, yeah, that was a bit of a weird scene. Like, okay, I understand, okay, that was a good way of sort of writing it off, like, oh, he's in love and stuff like that. But I think most of it comes from Uther, who throughout this whole episode has been so intense, and then he's suddenly like, don't waste my time again. Let him go. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. If he was like still serious throughout this, he was like, oh, so you're in love. I understand. Well, go. Don't waste my time again. Like, if he was still serious throughout that scene, that would have worked. But yeah, that was just a weird, like, tone shift in that scene. So yeah, that was odd. I wrote down the Avanak. Interesting little monster we had there. It was nice. It sort of got away from the whole, we had the witch, and then we had Knight Valiant, who is, the dude with the magic shield. It's like, okay, now we have a monster. That was interesting. And then I wrote down the elements and Arthur. So that made a lot of sense that... it did actually make sense that they basically got Arthur to face the beast. Instead of having Merlin go down and face it with his powers, they basically got Arthur, because, yeah, it's like the dragon says, it's like, Merlin is not supposed to be the big hero. He's supposed to be the support of the big hero, which is Arthur. So, the dragon says, like, okay, you're two sides of the same coin, basically. So, that's the thing, is that you need Arthur to go do this heroic stuff, and you need Merlin there to help him. So, that's pretty good, because, if you paint Merlin as just the hero, and, he's doing all this stuff and saving everyone, which he still kind of is, but if you have all of this, if you have him do all this, it's like, well, then, what the hell do we have Arthur for, So, I like that he's supporting Arthur while Arthur goes and fights. I do like that. Although I don't know, I kind of want to see a wizard battle, And more than fucking Harry Potter. More than in Harry Potter. Can I go on a slight tangent? Because I have never seen a good wizard battle on film. Granted, I haven't seen a lot of wizard films, but I don't know. All I remember from, like, Harry Potter versus Dumbledore, Voldemort. What the hell am I saying? That would be interesting though if that happened. But when he was fighting Voldemort, all I remember is them just, doing like energy blasts, doing a beam struggle with their wands. Like, who fucking cares? Like, I want to see something interesting. So hopefully the show does an actual wizard fight, even though yes, they do need to keep Arthur as the fighter basically. And then saying that, okay, well, this creature, the Avanak, was born of clay, which means it's earth and water. So how do you defeat it? Well, with the other two elements, air and fire. So yeah, and so Arthur's trying to use the torch to kill him, and then Merlin brings in this gust of wind to spread the fire and engulf the Avanak. So that was definitely interesting. I wrote down Nimueh. So, yeah, Nimueh, who seems to be, from what I can tell, is the sorcerer that plagued Camelot 20 years ago, which Uther defeated and then, banned all magic, basically. So, that's interesting that we kind of that she's actually coming back now, and she's going to be sort of, I guess, the villain of the season, at least. Maybe the whole show, but I would wager to guess the season. So yeah, so I can only assume that she's going to come back, and we're going to get more, probably see some more backstory with Uther and what actually happened back then. I wrote down Morgana and Merlin. That scene, I don't know. It's like, on the one hand, it's like, okay, finally, someone else that knows of Merlin's powers. And, okay, it's Morgana. That's interesting. They really haven't had almost any screen time together. And it's like, oh, your secret is safe with me. I know how you're in love with Gwen. And then she kind of walks off, and he's like, oh, not what I thought we were talking about. I do kind of wonder if she's fucking with him, basically. Like, is she kind of screwing with him, and she actually does know. This is the same thing I talked about with Lena Luthor on Supergirl. I was like, I bet Lena Luthor actually knows that Kara is Supergirl, but just hasn't said anything. Which did not end up being the case in Supergirl, so I'm going to guess that it's not going to end up being the case here in Merlin. But that would actually be cool if she was actually kind of screwing with him and does actually know of his powers. But especially with that conversation at the end with Gaius, probably not. So, dang it. Fucking Arthur. Why can't Arthur freaking just go for her? She's so fucking pretty. Although, with Uther being her guardian, it's like, they almost have a sibling dynamic going on. It's like they're kind of getting on each other's nerves and stuff like that. And it's like, so maybe that's why Arthur hasn't really considered her yet. He should. She's fucking gorgeous. So. And the last thing I wrote down was the one day. One day he will be recognized, which is pretty much what we're building up to. So, oh god. So I don't know if that's going to be at the end of the season or the end of the show. I have no idea, but one day he will be recognized by more than just Gaius, really. Even Gaius is just like, yes, you have powers, but you're a dumbass. So yeah. That's pretty much all I wrote down. Another good episode, I have to say, another good one. And I'm excited to see where we're going, especially now that we have a recurring villain. So, yeah, that is pretty much that. With all that being said, I'm Alex from 7th Hour Films, and I will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of my Merlin reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.